We're waiting for the beep.
That's the quietest go live I've...
I don't know if we're live. I can't tell, but the thing is red, and we're live. There we go. There's the sign, and we're live. I don't know which time we were live, but one of those times we were live. Welcome to SPSM Chat. I am your intrepid moderator. I'm at Doc Foreman. I am super thrilled that you're with us. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And for those of you for whom this is not, it doesn't have the same sort of meaning of boundless joy, I want you to know that there's a lot of members of our community that are thinking about you and wishing you well today. We're going to be talking about how to join national conversations about suicide and mental health, and about doing it a couple of ways. I'm very excited because there are two projects that we're going to be introducing you to tonight. The first is with Text Talk Act, which we've had on our show a couple of times, so they've got a new campaign coming out. So we're going to hear about some of their new campaign strategies. I'm pretty excited, and I'm going to tell you how you can become involved for those of you who are new to SPSM. And then we are going to talk about how to become involved in doing reaction videos or good live vlogging. And we're going to be using some of those skills with SPSM next week in our most ambitious live vlogging event ever, featuring movie reviews about suicide themes in cinema. We're also going to be following that up. We're still in the process of scheduling that with a really cool SPSM chat talking about some of the academic research in this topic. So we're going to have nifty social media event, live social media reviews about movies from fabulous members of our community, and then really tied into what our research says. I'm pretty excited. We've got a lot to cover tonight, but it's Mother's Day. We've been out celebrating, and many of us hugging, crying. There were cards, there were gifts, some went well. Sometimes there was Jam of the Month, and maybe that did go well for you. But before we get going, I want to introduce who is with us today. So today we have our intrepid IT producer. We have Mr. at ADWWW, Tony Wood. Tony, say hi to the people.
Hi, everybody.
Tony, if people want to get in touch with you about our feed or help get information to the participants, what would you like them to do?
You can just tweet right at me.
Tweet right at him. And if you are going to be participating with our movie review, Tony Wood is the face of the person who's going to help us make that run smoothly. So everybody, be very sweet to Tony or your feed won't look good. And then we have, look at that face. And then we have at Bart Andrews, Dr. Bart Andrews. How's it going?
It's going well. I had a fantastic Mother's Day. I got some truly horrible gift ideas from people who shall remain nameless. April. And aside from that, it worked out well. I ended up pillows make great gifts apparently if they're good pillows. So keep that in mind for the moms in your life. Pillows are great. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about our guests, and I'm here to learn.
You're here to learn?
Yeah.
So what did you get your wife for Mother's Day? Because we have all been enjoying this.
Okay, here's what we got. So one, the biggest present actually was the selfie stick was very popular. I'm not supposed to tell anybody that she got a selfie stick, so I guess
I wanted one so bad. I'm so jealous.
Too late.
Got a selfie stick. Got a really cool memory foam cooling gel pillow. That is the most comfortable pillow that I've ever used. I got to actually use it a little bit this morning, and it's super comfortable and it's super cool, as promised on the. So I don't really understand the cooling gel technology. It's not my area of expertise, but I believe it has something to do with the gel. Yes, that's the extent of my understanding. And let's see, I got a couple of social media related shirts. One of those shirts has the hashtag OOTD, Outfit of the Day, which is a big hashtag. Mm-hmm. And the other one is a selfies type shirt. So those were the presents for my wife, and it went, I thought, very well. The pillow was a big hit. The selfie stick was a big hit. I avoided the Jam of the Month, and I'm just not sure who is under the age of 80 and is excited about Jam of the Month. But
my mother-in-law loves that.
That's what she says. Yes, that's probably what's. Yeah, you and Brian probably has a talk with her about. Please act excited about the Jam of the Month because April's really into it, and she plays along. because she's a good mom-in-law. That's what.
And
That's
before we get to our last guest, we're just going to do a really, really quick shout out. We have a whole lot of folks here before I sort of introduce our next guest, who's I can't make my Twitter work. It keeps glitching around. I'm sorry. I want to do a shout out to some of our folks. We've got, of course, Dr. Bill Schmitz is in the house. We've got Twirl and Swirl. We've got Sarah Burns, Jonathan Singer, of course, at Student of Suicide, Dr. Bill Schmitz. We've got Carl Dunn, who is going to be an SPSM guest, talking about BPD, chat, and the cool stuff he does. He's been on our social media team. Carl Dunn. Crystal Roach is on. We're going to talk with her in just a minute. I don't know, Tom Cruise, are you out there? He's also coming up in a couple of weeks. Want to say hey to Andy Brown from Kansas. How are you, Andy? We're glad that you're here, and we're just waiting for everybody to get started, and it's right at 5 minutes. Crystal, how are you?
I'm great.
Everybody, Crystal, tell us who you are and what's happened to you since last we've had you on the show.
I'm Crystal Roach, and I can be found on Twitter at Chris Roach. And since I've been on the show last, I got a cool job, and I graduated from undergrad. And now I'm going to get my master's. Woo!
Yay! Congratulations.
You have a degree. Show us your hat, Crystal.
Oh. X-Files! Woohoo! Rock on!
Crystal, you are my go-to person to talk about Tumblr and social media stuff that the kids are into these days, because you are into stuff that's retro, that was very cool when I was your age, more years ago than we like to talk about when I watched the X-Files as they aired. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to social media-wise. You've been doing a bunch of projects since last we talked.
Yes, so the main project that I've been doing for social media is Text Talk Act, and just trying to get people involved in Text Talk Act and doing outreach, specifically really targeting Active Minds, which is a mental health organization for college students to start the conversation on mental health. And Active
Minds, just don't breeze past that. Active Minds has had some interesting people that have been involved in it in the last few months, right?
Yes, Active Minds is great, and they partnered with Text Talk Act, and it's why we were able to really form some really core connections within colleges, and colleges that are really doing some really cool things, like they're bringing somebody around, some of them who, a guy, I can't remember his name, but he bicycles across the United States to talk to people about suicide prevention and mental health. Like, how cool is that? Like, get on a bicycle and go across the U.S.
You guys also have some new strategies. So if you would, and I'm following my liner notes. I apologize. I'm responding to people and following my liner notes. Crystal, would you kind of just very quickly explain how Text Talk Act works? And for those of you who are not tweeting from your cell phones, you might want to get your smartphone out, and you might, if you've never done this before, I want you to follow along, and I'm going to follow along on my phone as Crystal tells us how we and our friends can participate.
Okay, so Text Talk Act is really easy, which is one of the reasons why it's really good for college students, because we don't really want to do anything very complicated. So one of the easiest, how you start it is you just text START to 89800. And once you do this, they're going to send you some messages. You want to grab a friend to talk to about this. And once you'll start receiving message about discussion questions that lead you through a conversation about mental health, like how to take care of yourself and how to help a friend in need. And it's a very important conversation. There's some really cool videos along the way. The conversation takes roughly 45 minutes, but once you text START to 89800, you're in the conversation. So you could do it, and then you could be at home later.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you. So like here it is, folks. I don't know if you can, whatever. So here is 89800. Here's START. I'm going to hit send. All right, so it's happened there. See if it, oh, there we go. See, look, stuff happened. So if you want to be goofing around on your phone while you're tweeting and while you're watching the YouTube, you don't need to focus. We are multitaskers because we are digital natives, right, kids?
And the great thing is they also ask you polling questions, so you can see how your answers how your responses compare to the rest of the United States who participated in the conversation. And it's open all throughout May for participation.
Oh, and look, there's stuff for organizers. So some of these folks have organized events. You can have an event code if you're with a group, and these groups are competing, right, for prizes this year?
Exactly. Our contest dates were actually April 14th and May 7th. So we'll be announcing our contest winners soon, but the Text Talk Act is still open for anybody to participate. So it's very easy. You just text START to 89800 and you're participating in it.
Fantastic. And see, when you get through the prompts, you get questions that you can process as a group. Absolutely encourage you all to try this out. Even if you've tried it out before, some of this content's going to be new, correct, Crystal?
Yes, we've improved it. We've taken some advice from the last Text Talk Act, worked with the Brain Trust to see what's working, what's not working, and change it, and we've gotten very positive reviews about it.
So tell us a little bit about some of the new strategy bits that you've added. As you guys have become more sophisticated, you do a couple of iterations a year. What are the insights you have?
So I guess one of the main changes about Text Talk Act, I suppose, would be me. Not me alone, of course, but I started off as an organizer for Text Talk Act, and then eventually I was brought on to do outreach. So that's one of the reasons why we've been able to reach more people, because I've been doing outreach. We've been working with Radiant Media to get on TTA for nationally to bring the word about. And we've also offered a lot of resources for teachers to cater to their needs in high school, because a high school run event is slightly different from a college run event, so we've offered them resources for how they can run the event and how they can ask questions about it, and just a great packet where they can get all the materials that they need.
What's different for a high school event versus, say, me using it or a university group using it?
Well, I think for a high school event, it's a little more difficult to organize in a sense. Maybe just trying to get all of the teachers together with the principal. I guess things along the lines of that, how to present it to the school. Whereas with a college, if a college club is running it, like at my alma mater, Active Minds was running it, we just have to write it up and get it approved by student activities.
Okay.
So the packet for teachers just has a lot of information, how to cater to their school, how to cater to their teachers, and how to present the event to high school students in response to us college students, which would be, go find somebody who's walking around campus. With a high school, people are in class all the time through the high school. There's no really big breaks for people to walk back and forth where you can do a 45-minute conversation.
Right. And what I really like is that one of the things that they've done is that they've designed the technology around, or how it's going to fit different programs and how we're going to involve people in a programmatic way. So these are folks who are having a conversation in their school or in their university, but we're using the technology not just to have the same health ed conversation we've been having about mental health with a little poster board. I mean, we've been having those for since I was in high school, but I know, forever, right, when the X-Files was on. And so the goal is to then use the technology so that you're not just having it your group, but you're really connected with a large conversation. So it's in some ways it's intimate, and in other ways it's highly connected. The technology facilitates that.
Exactly. And I think the technology is such a big portion, because if you walk up to somebody on the street and say, well, you want to have a conversation about mental health, they might be a little bit wary, unfortunately. But if you say, hey, you can do this with your cell phone, when you see this cool thing that you can do with your cell phone, people are more prone to respond to it and think that it's cool and oh, I can watch a YouTube video. And it really catches people, and that's what we saw when we planned the event at Active Minds at my alma mater. We just had the event recently, and it was just really great to see people who were like, wait, I can do this on my cell phone? I can go back to my dorm room and do this? I don't have to stay right here, but I can stay here and have a conversation? It worked really well, and I think it's a really good use of the technology that we have right now.
Right, and some of you probably maybe I'm the only one old enough to remember when health ed and like special topics classes involved a puppet and a film strip where there was a sound and then they hit the beep and they advanced the frames. So now people can.
Who was president then?
Let's not talk about it. But I do love you, Jimmy Carter. I love you, Jimmy Carter.
Did he have a big hat?
Get well, Jimmy Carter. Anyway, so the issue is that now you can watch those. I mean, now somebody can watch them in the everybody is taking around a media device. We want to take advantage of that. We don't have to worry about distributing equipment anymore. We simply have to get the word out to try this. Get your communities, your advocacy communities sharing this strategy, and can they, like, if folks want to use a similar kind of technology, can't they get with the Center for Civil Discourse and plan things with you all, maybe?
Yeah, I believe so. And you can definitely send me a direct message on Twitter or email me, and it's just crystalroach00@gmail, and I can hook you up with the person that would help you organize an event.
Twirl and Swirl wants to know, somebody
turned on.
Says, someone on the live feed have their phone on vibrate or near their mic? My phone is not vibrating. It's not near my mic. Anyone else?
Art.
I think that might have been me.
Is it Crystal? Crystal.
I'm sorry. I'm using my phone. Okay.
Okay.
I'm getting notifications from Twitter. Okay.
No, we know that.
Oh, she's getting retweets. She's the retweets and.
I guess this is a good thing. Okay, let me try to find it. Okay. Aha! I'm successful. Okay. It's no longer on vibrate. Woohoo!
Sweet. Thank you,
Twirl.
Hey, Marshman, everybody actually does want to know, so tweet out what you are listening to. Like, what kind of metal are we listening to tonight, Marshman? I like it. Awesome. And talk to Bill Schmitz and tell him to give up Taylor Swift.
I love Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Taylor Swift rocks. What's the hating on Taylor Swift?
It's appropriate for Crystal Roach.
Wow.
So we're fixing to head in. Who also cared? Everyone is typing Abraham Lincoln. Oh my Lord and mercy. Okay, there we go. So
I should put you in a meme with the Abraham Lincoln hat.
Is there a way to get me in a big hat and a beard, Bart? That's what I want to know.
I could. It's going to take me some time.
And then I want to Rule 34 that business. That'd be that's disgusting and hilarious. Okay. Woo! Woo! So everyone, we're going to do a little bit of switching gears. We want to thank you, Crystal. Like, feel free to stay on because we're going to be talking about reaction videos, and you were likely one of the few members of the community. There was like 5 of you young enough to know what a reaction video actually is and to have watched some. Are you there? Are you staying in, Crystal?
Yeah, I'm going to stay here.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the reaction video phenomena, which has been going on for several years, and I'm going to sort of brief history. And we're going to discuss how we are going to be attempting to be learning some skills as a community while having a blast. So some of you hopefully looked at the blog that we sent out with SPSN today. If not, we've tweeted some links. Or hopefully you've also been on our Facebook page for SPSN Chat. And you may have seen that I linked to YouTube. That would have been from my Abraham Lincoln days, right? With the big tube television in the 1980s. We have Siskel and Ebert, who are, gosh, I was just a little elementary school kid. Do you guys remember The Empire Strikes Back? May have heard of a little movie called The Empire Strikes Back. And they show doing a live movie. I know this has a point. Doing a live movie review, right? And it's on the evening news. It's Siskel and it's Ebert and some guy who's just an anus. He is a stick in the mud. He does not like The Empire Strikes Back. He is no fun to watch, and you just want to hate him and not listen to anything he says because he is super boring. And I put that movie on for a reason, or that YouTube on for a reason. So when we're talking about doing movie reviews, we're going to be encouraging everyone to do movie reviews next week, who's sort of part of our little lineup, on the topic of suicide. And I wanted to do a little bit of a do's and don'ts, talking a little bit about being entertaining and talking about how reaction videos do that. When we looked at Siskel and Ebert and the third reviewer, who was so atrocious, I don't even remember his name, and they were entertaining, What they said about the movie sort of made sense. They were not pompous, and they did not come across in a really sanctimonious way about how people should enjoy a movie. And one of the big complaints, of course, about Star Wars that this reviewer, who we now know historically got it all wrong. This reviewer basically says you should not take children to go see Star Wars. You should take them to see some other movie that is an adult movie, but with themes children will enjoy. I think the name of the movie was some movie called Tender Mercies or something. Because that will be a more elevated experience, and it has all the things that children should like. And
Singer, that's you, by the way. That's you. That was you, Singer.
What?
You just did Singer. I think Singer's the one that brought up Tender Mercies, wasn't he?
Was he? Where did he do that?
I don't know. Somewhere in the long chain of emails.
It's from the YouTube, right? So the issue, quite simply, is that there is what we think people should watch or want to see, or how we think it should be portrayed, and then actually how people engage with it, and then reviewing it in an entertaining way. And so the reason for us to talk about this tonight is to really encourage the SPSM community to consider modern ways that in social media we might review a movie or give our reaction to something. Why would we want to do this? Why would we want to do this? Bart, who was in on the conversation? I know Kevin Hines was involved, Bart was involved, Tony was involved. Bart, can you tell us a little bit about the night we came up with this idea a few months ago?
Yeah, well, there were all these movies. I mean, I want to say this was around Oscars time, right? And there was a great theme at the Oscars. A lot of the winning movies had suicide as a theme, and there was that one young man that came out and did this really, and I wish that I remembered his name, but he was so genuine, and he talked about, you know, his experience with suicide, being an attempt survivor, and the message to be yourself, stay being yourself. And we really thought it would be cool to have SPSMers do reviews on movies that have suicide as a component of the movie, because it's interesting. I find this really interesting. I ran into a lot of folks that didn't like Birdman, right, and the way that suicide was portrayed in the movie. I ran into other folks who loved Birdman and the way suicide was portrayed in the movie. The one thing that we've learned is that everybody's going to have a different reaction to how suicide is portrayed. And so we thought it would be really cool for folks to do movie reviews and give their input on how suicide was handled in the movie, what it meant to them, their personal reaction, what kind of messages they had. And I thought that was a fantastic idea.
Absolutely. And I agreed, and then I became mildly horrified because I realized that meant that the group would have to really develop the reaction video sort of skill set, the really sort of 2 to 3 minute, if we wanted to cover several movies, like a really tight 2 to 3 minute vlog, and we would really have to talk about how can we share our honest reactions, so that if you really didn't like the way that Birdman covered suicide, instead of we didn't like this word, and this word shouldn't have been used, instead they should have used this word, that instead of being sanctimonious, you could really give a powerful opinion that contributed to the conversation in a way people wanted to watch, not should watch, but would click and watch. Now, Crystal, I'm totally calling on you because you were young, but tell everybody what a reaction video is.
So I guess a reaction video just is exactly how it sounds. Like, what's your first reaction, or if you sit around and think about it, what's your reaction to something that's happened? Sometimes it's to a movie. In this case, it would be a movie. Other times it could be towards somebody coming out and just saying something. I actually had a reaction video on my blog when they announced that the X-Files was being rebooted.
Oh, can you tweet that out later today, Crystal?
It's embarrassing. I took it down. I might have it still saved on my phone, so you guys might be able to see it on Twitter. But don't judge me running up and down the street screaming, because that was my reaction video. And I believe that this would actually help me because it was not articulate at all. So I believe that I also need to cater my skills to how to have a appropriate reaction video.
So reaction videos, and I'm just catching up the feed. Want to say shout out to hi to Alicia from the National Council. Really great. What a wonderful compliment to Bart. He is the king of memes. I agree. And we want to talk a little bit about what makes a reaction video good or bad. First of all, we're not going to attempt to be good. We're just going to attempt them. So no pressure. This is We're going to have fun. It's about movies. We're going to discuss and we're going to give reaction videos. But the goal with a reaction video, and we're not going to do the truest form of that, which is to watch somebody's really honest and sincere, thoughtful reactions to what they're seeing. And so it's genuine, and you learn how to be entertaining in sort of a genuine way, which becomes really important when you're doing social media. People care what your opinion is. They really want to hear your thoughts, and you have to learn how to sort of in a really authentic, like in the moment way, just deliver it, right, Crystal? Like those are the best reaction videos.
Yeah, and I think that's why mine ended up getting so many hits on my blog, because I guess people could see that it was actually genuine. Me running up and down the street screaming about the X-Files. Pretty sure people hadn't heard that for about 20 years.
Don't rub it in, Crystal. So, I mean...
Crystal, I think your mic got covered up by something because you're sounding very distant.
Do a quick mic check while we talk. So we're going to be getting folks to come on in 3 minutes. There you go.
It's you. Perfect.
Hooray!
We're going to get people to sort of say, this is the name of the movie. It's roughly about this. Let me tell you what my reaction was. And to really be able to do an unscripted sort of, let me just off the cuff tell you. One of the things that's really important in social media in many ways is that it's not overly produced, right? That people are actually more drawn to things that are relatively unscripted, that seem really sincere. They want to connect with what @DocForeman sort of reacts to, and it's my job to just learn how to be really genuine but be really skillful in how I'm genuine. Does that make sense? Bart, can you help with that?
I think that made perfect sense. And the idea of, I really would like the idea of the one thing is to do your review right after you watch it, right? So was that the plan? Is that, in fact, in the instructions that I was attending to closely?
No, what was it? I wish that we could accommodate that, but that's not everybody has the ability to sort of do a little video and then for us to sort of edit them. I wish for the number that we're going to actually try a fairly large number of live events. It could go horribly wrong. Tune in. It could be a train wreck next week.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think so. But the goal is...
Titanic was fine.
The goal is to... It was entertaining. The goal is, though, for you to have a couple of main points and then just sort of be able to deliver it and don't overthink it. Like, the goal is something that anyone could connect with who's seen the movie too. And it is okay if it is controversial. Like, I loved that Torrance Swirl said about Empire Strikes Back that she felt it was the weakest link in the Star Wars trilogy.
What?
I like how she just outed Twirl and Swirl to everybody, but she didn't
She started that! It's out there in the world!
Yeah,
I don't like Star Wars. There we go.
What?
No, Crystal does not like Star Wars. Let everybody know.
That's a wrap tonight!
And we're done. That was the last episode of SPSM. I hope you all enjoyed it. Because all the nerds killed
My
us.
screen's about to go black.
Boo!
Yes, somebody is covering Dead Poets. Sunshine Kayak mentions Dead Poets Society. Someone's going to be covering that. After we proposed this project, what I want to point out was that when I started paying attention to how many movies and television shows cover the theme of suicide, I think it's data that says this is actually not stigma that keeps us from talking about it. Really creative people want to talk about suicide and a lot of things surrounding it all the time. It's that we're like, as a community of preventionists, a lot of our media has sounded like that 1/3 reviewer who's such an anus and so uptight that we haven't maybe connected with him. Or, I mean, I hope. So the goal is for us to really start to say things, and I'm really particularly excited that we have several lived experience reviewers, because my thinking as a clinician, you know, as fabulous as I think that I am, I don't think it's nearly as valuable as what it must be like to really see this on screen for somebody who understands this from a personal point of view. I think in the end, like, that's what I'm really caring about, is how they experience that, what they think is interesting about that. And we're gonna have several lived experience reviewers. Bart, I'm actually gonna tag you again. I would like a guess from you, Bart, about what you think the difference might be, as you're wonderful about really sort of covering both worlds in a really interesting way, about how you might view that theme with a clinician lens versus a lived experience lens.
You know, that's a really good question. It's funny because when I'm watching movies and my clinician hat is on, I'm always amazed at how untherapy-like therapy looks like when I'm watching it, right? And sometimes I'm very judgmental about when I try to take that therapy hat off because then I can't embrace the movie and immerse myself in it. So I think when I'm watching, I'm much more in my lived experience place most of the time. But just getting to know the sense, I think that one of the things that I notice that's very different about a provider hat on watching a movie versus lived experience is that the provider hat doesn't tend to necessarily notice where the triggers might be or where those moments where somebody with lived experience might start getting kind of feeling really tense and feeling it very strongly. So those are things I think that when you're a person with lived experience around suicide like me and many of the folks that I know, some of those triggers, even in movies we really enjoy, can be really intense. And what's really interesting about this is that there's times in a movie where and we're watching with the family, and I'll be inside going, this movie's going to have a suicide theme long before it's overt to everybody else. And sure enough, that's borne out most of the times. So it's really interesting to me when I'm in that moment and feeling it, there are certain themes and music and foreshadowing that people with lived experience won't pick up on that foreshadowing. And that people with lived experience will pick up on it, and they'll sense that it's coming. The flip side of that is sometimes when a movie throws in a suicide theme where there isn't any of that foreshadowing and it hits folks out of the blue. And that can, for someone with lived experience of suicide, sometimes those themes in movies can be really rough, right? So that's one of the things to be aware of when we're talking about suicide in movies and when folks are exposed to those things in movies. People have lived that, and some of those themes can hit them really hard, and depending on how it's handled. I know folks, for instance, that don't care for movies that deal with suicide in a humorous fashion. That's never been an issue for me, and I've seen movies that are grossly irreverent and inappropriate around suicide that I still find quite enjoyable and funny. There are other folks that think that's a really bad thing, and I respect them for that. So I think those are things to think about. I'm not always sure that providers, unless they've been trauma-informed care exposed, get that sense of triggers as well, or they do a lot of work around triggers. And I think that in general, if you look at the provider population, they're a group that isn't real savvy around suicide to begin with. And I'm sorry, providers who are listening who may disagree with that, but we're not necessarily, when we look at the whole group, SPSMers aside, there, let me get that in, are necessarily really savvy about lived experience around suicide or really comfortable with suicide. And so I'd be really curious to sit with folks who don't have the experience in a provider hat and see what their reaction is. So that's my
Yeah, that would be
monologue.
really interesting. I thought that was excellent. Like, I love that. That'd be interesting to see, like, someone with lived experience, someone who's more clinical, someone who's academic, someone for who it's, you know, just person on the street who doesn't have direct experience with this. Like, what do they think? And I mean, if we would just talk about our reactions to the things that artists are already really putting out there about this topic, I mean, what would we learn, or what conversation might we be able to have? I have to say, the conversation that we had last week has had my brain going all week, which is, you know, what if everybody's talking about suicide, but the way that we, as a community of suicide preventionists, have made the topic is what keeps us distant from the conversation. And with what we have coming up, this has definitely been on my mind. And I thought, you know, we may have been talking about it in such a way that everyone else is talking about it, they quit talking to us. I would love for us to all be back in the same conversation together. And I think things like reaction videos where you see multiple people react, and it's not always the same, and you might disagree or not agree. I think suddenly we get a much more multiple dimensioned picture about what suicide really means in our society. Because I kind of wonder if we really know.
I think that's a good point. I think it's a really good point, April. And one of the things you see this to a varying degrees. If you ever get a provider on Twitter and have them, for instance, hashtag suicide or hashtag depression, and read a lot of the very heartfelt and genuine expression that you see on the feeds around these topics, you will see providers really freak out. If they haven't been exposed to that before and seen the raw emotion and the purpose of that emotion, they tend to have a panic attack. And often one of the reactions they see is, well, this needs to be shut down. We need to shut down this hashtag. People should not be having these things. It's not. Here's the thing you'll hear. It's not safe. And those of us with lived experience have heard this. You know, the idea of getting a bunch of people who are suicide attempt survivors in the same room talking to each other. I've heard providers say that's just simply not safe. And because of the fact, the reason it's not safe, it's not safe for the providers. That's who it's not safe for.
Say that again. Stop, and say that again.
It's not. Yeah. Go. Tony, you and I talked about this. Remember, Tony, earlier? Yeah. So it's not safe for the providers. That was it. So it might be that our providers' anxiety about liability and about mortality and lethality, that we're really afraid of our patients dying, both what it means to us and that it's just so upsetting and distressing for us, that anxiety has kept us out of really good conversations. You said that really well, April. Risk management, and that's why I don't even like that term, suicide management, in training. And there's a very good training that has a name in it. I understand it. I think it's a wonderful training. But there's a hidden language. There's code in that concept. It's a code that providers gravitate to, but folks with lived experience, we kind of chafe a bit at that language. But a lot of what you see in suicide work is a lot of risk management instead of connecting with people and dealing with the intense emotion. And that's really, when you look at suicide, it is around intense pain and intense emotion. And those are things that we need to be able to hold and experience and be with, as opposed to fight or try to tamp down. So I think that's really important. I think you see that in movies. In some of these movies, the way that it's dealt with is so genuine and raw that it can be quite incredible, and it can also be really painful, which, as it should. What do you think about all this? Because we brought you in for Text Talk at Crystal, but you're coming in as our digital native and about reaction videos. What do you think about what do you think about this idea?
I think it's actually a really good idea because...
Do a quick mic check for me. There we go.
Okay.
You lost it again. Like, find out where it is.
Okay. My face is going to be close. Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. I think it's actually a really good idea because, like you guys have been talking about, you get the genuine emotion from some of the people who have lived experience. You can tell, I don't think that this is good, or I think this is good. And their opinion matters because at the end of the day, they're the ones who have the experience. And we're the people that are going to be influencing how films are made in the future. So it's important that we get our opinions out there. Some of us have the educational experience, the lived experience, all those things matter in this whole creation of all of these reviews and all that kind of stuff. It really matters. So I think this is a really cool thing to do, and it's really important.
We have a couple of comments just from the feed. This is really great. I'll sort of review, so give you guys a couple minutes to look at the tweets if you haven't seen them. Some folks are asking which movies that we're going to cover, and we're still finalizing that list. But some of the movies that you've mentioned, I know we've already got folks who are volunteering that that's the movie that they want to cover. We're just letting people sort of pick what speaks to them. We think that's the way to have really good media, and if you have things that you're really into, if you want to do a reaction video, there is nothing, if you're not going to be part of the lineup because we were foolish and we overlooked your wisdom, consider if you want to make a reaction video and try one and share it next week. Several of you really mentioned how these movies affected you. And if you don't want to do a video because it's a new skill, although I have to tell you, Shy Lewis, you did a great job with that Shopkins opening video. You were a champ doing the new video thing. So if you want to just try, this is a movie review is very low stakes, just a 2 or 3 minute deal. Give it a shot. Look at the YouTube that we linked to that shows how to do it. It mentions some video editing software. I wouldn't go that far. You could just do something quick on your phone and upload it to Facebook or YouTube. Share a link with us next week. If video is too intimidating, try a little vlog where you really share your opinion and why. Share the link next week because we will have the live event and we will have sort of live reviewers, but we're going to curate all of this. And if you want your content to be part of the master curation of our community's wisdom about suicide in mainstream media, put it in. Like, that's what this is perfect for.
Did you say 2 or 3 minutes? Because I've been doing the Godfather series as a reflection of self-destructive behavior, and it's like 10 hours. Is that too long?
I don't know what you want me to say right there, Tony. What are you cueing me for?
I'm just trying to get you to hit the 3 minutes. It needs to be 3 minutes.
It really
Please don't do 10 minutes.
So here's the deal. So let's talk about let's talk about this. Let's talk about a little bit how to do a video. There were some great advice in the link that I sent you that really talked about reaction videos. That talked about really tightening them up. That don't do long outros, don't do big explanations like, Bart will talk to you and Tony will talk to you about my monologuing. You really want to keep it to that 3-minute mark or less, because that's really as much attention as that medium sort of sustains. Longer commentary, like really extended commentary, is a lot more like a university lecture, and there's definitely a place for those, and those they sort of go in a different category. But reaction videos are usually, they're pretty tight and they're pretty short. Crystal, you want to talk a little bit more about that short video length about this medium?
I guess I would just say what you were talking about. Like, it's very important to have a short video and hit all your points in like a very succinct manner, because people aren't going to sit around and wait. Personally, if I miss an episode of something and I look online for a reaction video and I see it's 40 minutes long, I say, well, I could have just watched the episode. This is not what I'm looking for. So the short amount of time is very important, because you definitely don't want somebody skipping around your video and then missing the main point that you were actually trying to tell people.
And, what we're trying to do is help you just I want to say that really social media is very experiential. So the idea is for those of you who are just dipping your toe in the water, we want you to just keep dipping your toe in the water. We've spent the last year, we really started doing a lot more live vlogging about a year ago. Is when we started getting this rolling. And we want members of our community to really be good at this, so that when important things like the Oscars come out and there are all these movies, that members of our community already have their own channels. They know how to do a tight 3-minute reaction vlog. They can talk about that movie in a way someone will listen to, because by the time the Oscars have happened and the movies are out, that's too late for you to develop the skill. The time to develop this skill is right now, before the big movie release that you want to get on the wave with, right? And I saw Bart nodding his head. I'd love for you to talk about that more, Bart.
Well, I think that the wisdom on SPSM always blows my mind, and just that folks get it, and the whole concept of it being a reaction and not a summary that just gives you the plot and gives the movie, and that part of the point of your video is what your experience was, what it meant to you, and doing that in a nice, tight format is really key. Those are things that I think are really important. One of the things, just watching the feed that are going to come on, there's a lot of, and I see this a lot on some of the lived experience listservs I'm on. People want to reach out to folks that do movies and have them talk about suicide the right way, right? I'm going to be honest about that. That makes me really nervous, because first of all, even in the lived experience community, nobody can decide what the right way is. 2, I don't want the right way, because that means people aren't going to express themselves the way they want to express themselves, which means we're going to have a limited set of opportunities and a limited way, and that makes me really nervous. I do not get upset when people are disrespectful about the topic of suicide if it was genuine. Now, if someone's purposely doing something around suicide to harm people or be purposely damaging, that's a different thing. But if folks are just generally expressing their view of suicide, but it doesn't agree with the quote-unquote correct way to be an artist around that, I'm not interested in that. I want people to express themselves and tell the story that they want to tell in the way they want to tell it, and then it's for us to choose to react to that, how we want to react to that. So I think that's really, really important to me. There's folks that disagree with that. They really want safe messaging, and I understand that, but I would say that, art needs to be art, and that's why we have it, and it needs to be as diverse as possible.
And you really addressed Chris Maxwell, just like a real big shout out to you. He said there was talk in our field after Birdman about possibly developing a suicide prevention training for artists and directors. And maybe if that was something that they wanted, but they are artists and directors, and so I feel like really hesitant to tell them that they have to. It would be like telling chefs that they really need to go to dietitian school before they can create like food that they believe in or that is really good. I mean, if there is a producer or director that's really interested in messaging in a specific way, I would love to work with them about that. But I don't know. It doesn't seem right to train artists in the way that we think that they should talk about our topic. Like, I'm not certain that's the direction to take. And I'm sure that there were a lot of suicide preventionists. Like, we've been talking a long time of they didn't do it right. They didn't talk about suicide right.
Right.
You know, I don't think it's going to happen, folks. And I think it keeps us out of the conversation. And by insisting that we know what's right and they need to do it our way. We also had we also had that that their understanding of reaction videos is it's somebody reacting to video live, which is absolutely the truth. And the popularity of reaction videos, especially to ones that were sort of really grotesque in some way, in the last couple of years, has been all over the internet. So you want to see somebody's like live horrified reaction because it's that's authenticity, right? And if we had the technology to sustain that, we might consider doing something. We're just going to be getting people used to giving authentic reactions in front of the camera a bunch in one night. But if you come up with a way that we can do this with a large group of collab where we can do real reactions, I am all in. Like, direct message me if you've got an idea for a way to do a gig like that, and we'll sort it out. Any other things in Twitter that the rest of you want to respond to? There's a whole lot going on.
I think you need to do a shout out to the Entertainment Industries Council and Marie Gallaudet because they do a lot of important work with this exact topic.
I know, and I'm going to be doing a webinar with them.
They're delightful people.
Let's do a big shout out to the EIC. We're going to be talking about social media and SPSM and all sorts of cool stuff on a webinar that's going to be coming out. I believe it's May 28th. I think we're doing the IT test on the 27th, and then EIC is really going to talk about social media and mental health on the 28th. I'll share with you guys the information. It's going to be super cool, and they do great stuff. Other thoughts that we need to do a shout out for? While I look at the feed here. Help me out. Somebody help me out. The tweets are flying too quick, and now I've got to pause.
Well, I think there's a lot of comments about art being art, and I think that one of the things that we need to be clear about is that sometimes people do things that are meant to be intentionally harmful, and I think that nobody's cool with that. I think we can all admit to that. But we can't have a censorship mentality around the concept of talking about suicide. And in fact, it's one of the things, I think we see the same things around race discussions because folks feel so limited about being able to say what's on their mind, and they're going to be afraid they're going to be accused of being a racist or people are going to be upset that conversations don't occur. And I think to some extent we see that with suicide. At the same time, we have folks who have family members, loved ones who've lost people to suicide, people who are suicide attempt survivors, who've been so marginalized and so unheard that there are real wounds there. And I do not want to minimize those wounds because they're real, they're legitimate. But sometimes in that you see a reaction against everything that doesn't fit right in the way that they want it to be. And I'm not okay with that. There is a wide range, and I'd rather have people talking about it and getting conversations about it, and you have the right to disagree and pass that feedback on. What I don't want is our conversation on suicide to become these scripted, here's what you can say, here's what you can't say. This is an okay feeling to share, this is one that isn't. Now, you may share something that upsets me, and I'm going to tell you that, but I'm glad that you did say it. I'm glad that, and I think one of the things you're seeing for instance, ESPN just recently had an article about a female runner who suicided, and not a well-known athlete. This is unheard of, right? The world is changing. Suicide is being recognized as something that we can talk about, need to talk about, need to highlight. That article had some themes in it that really upset people, and they expressed that unhappiness, and they sent a lot of feedback to to the reporter. I'm thrilled that the reporter wrote that story. There's pieces in that story that I wasn't jumping up and down about. There were pieces that I thought were amazing. But here we have, in a major media outlet, a discussion about someone who is not famous and their suicide that was heartfelt and created a conversation. So the world is changing. But if everybody gets damaged and beat up every time they report or talk about suicide, well, who's going to want to talk about it anymore? Right? If you whitewash it or limit it so much, then we're not going to have a really good, diverse conversation. So I say write about it, make movies about it, talk about it. If people are upset, they'll let you know, but don't be afraid to do that, please.
Yeah, that was excellent point. This is exactly what we're talking about, which is, has our community behaved in ways that have shut down conversation or separated ourselves? And social media, I mean, really is solving that problem, which means that if there's an article and there are multiple perspectives on was that an effective way to address the topic of suicide in this context, we can have that whole conversation. No one's voice has to be lost. It's not like when Siskel and Ebert were doing their critical review on the evening news, and if Siskel and Ebert didn't do it right, no one else's voice was getting heard and the topic was just going to be done an injustice. Topics now can really be addressed completely and thoroughly from a very multidimensional way. Social media allows that to happen. I mean, in some ways, it is this medium that makes that possible. You guys are doing great. I really loved what Twirl and Swirl had to say, which is, I realized that SPSM is my community too. And she said, so I have a voice that I get to use. And then she says, just be respectful. So what I really liked is that it's sort of that Spider-Man-esque, with great power comes great responsibility. So can we have our panel tonight talk a little bit about how we think the community learns to be responsible, respectful, or how we start to moderate ourselves? But how does that work in social media?
I think it works on social media through like a trial and error type way. I know for me, when I was first starting to get on social media, I learned what was and wasn't appropriate by posting something, and somebody said, hey, this isn't cool, I don't like this, and then I was like, oh, well, why isn't it cool? And then somebody explained it to me, and I realized, oh, this isn't cool. So I think the trial and error thing is very important for some people, because you can't expect people to know something that they've never gotten the experience with. You have to explain something to people so they can actually get the message, and even if they don't agree with you, at least it's in their head like, oh, well, I know that this could offend some people. So I think that's something that's really important with social media, maybe the trial and error. And I just wanted to get back to the point about not having things scripted, because I think that's really important, because as we were talking about through this whole thing, you want people to be genuine. If we tell people how to react, then we lose that whole genuine environment, and people aren't going to want to talk to their friends because their friends are going to respond to them with that scripted response of what's okay and what's not. So I think that that's also something that's really important, to have like the basic, be respectful, here are some guidelines, but not the you can do this, you cannot do that, blah, 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 this is the way it has to be.
That was excellent. Thank you, Crystal. And this is like the whole point about social media is it's socializing media. I mean, we all bump up against each other, and we sort of start to understand how we want to behave as a group or a community, sort of based on how, you know, because we are connected to each other, we give each other feedback. I mean, there's social feedback that happens. Bart, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, one of my thoughts is we need more folks like Crystal. I think one of the things that's so clear is that the younger folks have been brought up with a different mindset. There's been more openness, and their willingness to be honest and genuine and have these conversations is so obvious to me. And so it's one of those things where I see so much hope in the future, and we need more young folks speaking their mind like that, because let's face facts, the suicide prevention community has a lot of folks that have been around a long time, and there's a message that's been around for a long time, and we've done a good job, but the generation behind us is going to take us to the next level. And I agree. So the piece I would add is that in terms of it's a learning process, like Crystal said. I take a very different approach for things that I would share from a lived experience perspective, and when I see people speaking about it from a lived experience perspective, than I would with someone that's an expert or a provider. There are things that from a lived experience perspective where someone would say, well, I did this and I did that. Whatever folks did, that's awesome. But for a provider to be preachy or coachy or guilty, I get really upset about that, because it's one thing for someone that's been there and lived it to talk about what worked for them. It's another thing for someone that hasn't been there to tell them what they should or shouldn't do. So I think that when we're messaging around suicide, be aware of what hat you're wearing, and if you're wearing an expert or provider hat, keep in mind what your message is and what your end goal. If your end goal is to get more people interested in listening and paying attention, then you want to be attractive. You don't want to be bossy or coachy. So those are just pieces that I've learned in watching providers interact with people on social media. I see what works well and what doesn't work well. My goal, I try to be, is let you teach me about you, because as has been well said by other folks, the people that we work with are experts in their lives. Let them be the experts in their lives, and let's learn from them.
So Bart, you really did speak to something that's going on in the feed where someone said, I really have to think about my messaging because I'm a student, but I'm planning to be a professional. I have to think about getting, at my applications, about research grants, that if someone does see me on social media and I do a reaction video, or if I talk about this topic, am I talking in a way that's going to cause me problems later? And I have and so Bart's advice, which is think about what hat you're wearing when you're on. Absolutely, I understand, and my name says I'm at Doc Foreman, and I know what hat I'm wearing when I'm commenting. I can absolutely tell you there's some sort of differences in generational perception, because I know that there are people in my field who are maybe 10 years down the road who are not even subtle, that they're sort of mildly horrified that I exist online, let alone everything else. But I'm very clear about what I am doing and why, and I have put a lot of thought into it. Of course, I'm super grateful down below Mr. Tony Wood, who's really helped me with this. Also, the second thing, which is if you are in one of those provider, researcher, clinician, expert hats, do remember the solution to pollution is dilution, so that if you are creating a lot of content, that you have in social media some breathing room to be spontaneous, that there will be a generational effect whereby, Crystal's saying, I don't want you to see my reaction video because I looked, I was running around and it wasn't my most developed video ever. But there's going to be a whole generation of sort of the age of Crystal sort of on up to sort of probably a little younger than me, who's going to be, they're all going to have that digital footprint. So they're going to expect that you leave a digital footprint that shows maturation and development as your ability to express yourself progresses, so that one video, when you were younger developmentally, is not going to have the weight that you would be afraid that it might have. I know that some of you have wonderful advisors who are telling you be super, super careful what you put online because it may come back to haunt you. And in one sort of respect, they're correct. And there are some gross things, like gross, like in sort of crudely evident that you should not do, like, keep your junk covered, stuff like that.
Oh, snap.
Snap.
I messed up on that one. Whoa.
But there's going to be some allowance for maturation. We're getting down to the last 2 minutes. Whew. And I can't keep up with the feed again tonight. So for our panel, and I won't make Bart go first because I promised I wouldn't so much. For our panel, what are our final thoughts? I'm going to start with Tony Wood. As you're reflecting on this, what are you noticing? Final thoughts for tonight, Tony?
We have had a more active conversation tonight than I can process, so that I can't. There's no summing this up. There's too much. There's too much information there. It's like drinking from a fire hose. But we're all looking forward to. We are looking forward to seeing y'all next week in the movie reviews, and that's exciting for us because it kind of mixes the media together. So see y'all next week.
Woohoo! And then Miss Crystal, give us a shout out for Text Talk Act.
Oh, Text Talk Act! Remember to text START to 89800. If you want more information, please message me. I will respond. And I guess my final thoughts tonight are just that everyone's opinion is important, and I'm really excited to see all of the diverse opinions next week. So.
And then Dr. Bart Andrews.
What a great show, and just watching the thread, I got to say that being a part of SPSM has been a life-altering experience for me. Seeing, I think when I talk to other folks about this, it's one of the few places where you see people with lived experience, people with provider expertise, researchers, statisticians, survivors of various sorts all come together in this playing field and communicate, and it's just, I always walk away from this thinking, how cool is this? And so my final thought on this is thank you all for being there. This was an amazing conversation, and I say we carry it forward. That's the goal. Carry it forward.
And so you've had another hour with us. Thank you for joining us tonight. It was an amazing feed. We look forward to our contributors who are going to be either contributing in the live feed, and then some of you who are planning some cool projects. My big final thought is put your toe in the water. Learn how to do some live blogging, especially about reactions to media, because I believe that I want our voices about suicide to be a big part of the national conversation. And do try Text Talk Act, text START to 89800, and have a great week, y'all. Take care.
Good night, everybody.